you're having a wonderful day. We have a couple of exercises I'd like you to work on at home while you're unable to come into the martial arts school. First thing I'd like you to do is a couple of exercises. The first one would be push-ups for a minimum of 30 seconds, followed by double chops for a minimum of 1 minute, followed by mountain climbers for a minimum of 30 seconds. Now, I'd recommend doing 2 or 3 rounds of each one of these exercises. You already know how to do the push-ups, you already know how to do the double chops, but for the mountain climbers, if you have any questions about mountain climbers, a couple of things you want to know about this is you want to always have your hands on the ground and one leg close in. When you're doing this exercise, you want to step up, boom, switch to the left, switch, 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 while you're performing this exercise. So make sure you do a couple of those today. A couple of rounds of it would probably be the best way to go. Thank you and have a good day. Black belts. Right now, I'd like you to really focus in on those back stances and front stances and horseback riding stances. The 3 different stances that you're going to need in a lot of your traditional forms. Now remember, when performing a back stance, you want to have about enough room between your legs so that you can get about a tennis ball in between. Front stance, you want to make sure that you have shoulder width distance and then a reasonable length between your legs. Make sure that the front knee is bent almost to 90 degrees. And then a horseback riding stance, you want to get down nice and low and keep your toes pointing straight ahead. That's one of the major factors that most people miss, even at the black belt level. So, when performing a back stance, remember, we're going to start with our right leg back. Boom. The weight is in the back leg. If you can see, my legs are almost aligned this way, together. These toes are pointing out approximately 45 degrees. These are straight ahead. Work on this back stance. Make sure you have this really strong right here. Now watch when I move forward into another stance. I'm going to bring my feet together, step straight ahead, turn those toes out. Now it will naturally widen out just a little bit, but it will get you into a nice back stance again. Remember, back knee's bent, front knee is bent. And I recommend doing this with your hand right here on the waist. Step yourself forward, boom, right to the stance. Go up a couple times forward, then work on stepping back, boom, into another back stance. And then again, stepping back, boom, into another back stance, maintaining the good bend in the knees. Almost 90 degrees is a really, really good back stance. So work on getting that and getting it consistently. So when you're doing your forms, you don't have to think about the back stance. You can think about everything else in the stance. Front stances, kind of similar. You want to make sure that you have this really down well so you don't have to think about it while performing your forms. It will just naturally come to you, and then you can worry about what your hands need to do, the directions to move, and all the other parts of the form, and less about the actual stance while performing it. Now, in a good front stance, as I mentioned before, you want to have shoulder distance between your legs, this way across. So this leg's right here equal with this shoulder, this one's right over here equal with this shoulder. Now, as I step forward, I'm going to take my back leg, breathing close, centering my balance on top of that one leg that has no weight in it. I mean, that does have weight in it, the other one doesn't. Then step forward, bouncing out, back to a front stance. Bending this almost 90 degrees. My back leg is nice and straight. Those toes are also pointing forward. Hands are right here again, so I'm going to do the same thing. Step forward, keep the weight out of that leg, then back out to a good front stance again. All my toes are forward, front knee is bent, back leg is straight. Again, stepping back, same idea. I push into it, bringing it here so there's no weight in that leg, then step it out again. Then one more time, same thing. I'll push back here and then push out. Every time I go to this position, I'm going to lock out that leg, keep the front knee bent. One more thing to remember about front stances. When you're in that good front stance, make sure you keep your hips, shoulders, and belt knot pointing straight ahead while performing the technique. So when I put my right leg back to a good front stance, my front knee is bent, almost to that 90 degrees, back leg nice and straight, all my toes are forward, my hip, I'm going to keep my hip forward, belt knot forward, shoulders forward, focus forward while performing the technique. It doesn't matter what the technique is, make sure you always keep those hips forward while performing it. The final stance I was talking about was that horseback riding stance. I remember when you go into a good horseback riding stance, you want to make sure you have 1.5 shoulder distance between your legs, as well as making sure your knees are bent, and look at my toes. They're pointing straight ahead. Boom, hands back to your ribs, hands on your waist, whatever it is. Now, the best way to practice this one is to get in this stance and hold it for a period of time. 1 minute, 2 minutes, 30 minutes if you're really good at it. Or I'd recommend just doing that 1 minute. Then after that, squats. Work on squats, keeping those toes forward, and then hold it nice and low again for another one of those minutes. Now, remember also in this stance, keep your back straight, keep your eyes focused straight ahead. A lot of students, when they perform the stance, they get down low, they bend their body forward, and they squat down. But the stance is destroyed at this point in time. My center of gravity moves. You don't want that to happen. Go straight down, keep your back as straight as possible, and that keeps your center of gravity in a good location. thing I would like to see you all working on is your inner palm blocks. Now, an inner palm block as a black belt comes from the belt and works upwards. Both hands work at the same exact time. Now, this time I'm going to do this at a 45-degree angle so you can see that I'm in a back stance as well as performing the technique. So what I do is go into my back stance, make sure the weight's in the back leg, toes are forward, these are out about 45-degree angle. Now, the inner palm block, as I mentioned, comes from the bottom. So the left arm, which is in the front, sits the bottom, the other hand sits the top near the ear. Now, I focus on my target, inner palm block. Make just like a chop block. Going to bend that elbow about 150 degrees, keeping your wrist nice and straight, top fingers right to eye level, other hand tight back to your ribs. And then reset that hand to the bottom again, inner palm block. Set to the bottom again, inner palm block. Now, if you notice, as I'm doing this, my hand, knuckles are facing up, knuckles are facing out. As I turn, boom, the palm faces towards me, the palm faces upwards on the other hand. So again, one more time, down here, boom, inner palm block. Reset, inner palm block. I recommend doing about, I'd say about 30 of them on each hand. Work on it over and over again. Work on the back stance first, then work on the inner palm block separate, so that you can have both those techniques good. Now, if you did as I said earlier, and you get your back stance really, really nice, you should be able to get to that back stance and forget about it while performing the inner palm blocks. Finally, I'd like to do a couple stretches before we finish up everything here today. Remember, take some time, minimum 30 seconds on each stretch, and make sure you're fully warmed up using the other exercises and techniques I told you to work on today. Now, the first thing I'd like you to do would be your regular leg pull, which you already know. So you want to take your left leg and extend it all the way out. Toes pointing up, knees flat, other legs tucked nice and tight, hands are together, deep inhale. Reach up and extend all the way down. Eyes focused on your toes, look at them, and count yourself down for a total of 30 counts on each side. I even recommend doing it more than once. Remember your goal, start here and then pull yourself down a little bit more. Always keep your eyes on your toes and make sure you extend both your hands all the way out equally towards the target. Remember, do one side. After you finish that, switch your legs, same thing, tucked in tight, leg extended, toes pointing all the hands all the way together, deep inhale. Reach up and extend all the way down. Again, eyes are still focused on the target, which would be your toes. Hands are both towards that foot at the same time. Remember, your goal is equality on both your hands as you extend down. Why? Because when you only put one hand out there, it turns your body, it stretches different, it doesn't give you as much of an efficient technique. So you want to make sure both hands go out equally towards the target when you're doing that stretch and keep your eyes on the goal. Now, after you finish doing that on both sides, I recommend minimum 30 seconds on each side. Same thing for the next stretch. Take both your legs, extend them all the way out. Make sure your toes are pointing all the way up. Knees are down, hands are together, deep inhale. And exhale, you're going to extend all the way forward and down to the ground for leg split and bending, going forward as far as you can. Now remember, when you're doing this stretch, you want to bend at your hip as far as you can forward, extending your hands out. You should feel the stretch here on the bottom of the leg and in the back also. So make sure you extend it all the way out as far as possible and hold there for minimum 30 count. I recommend go a little bit longer. Then bring it right back up and you're done. The final stretch I'd like you to do today, and for this next one, get there any way you need to, is to go up to a full straddle. Take both those legs, keep them where they are, extend yourself forward if you need to, or stand up first if you'd like to instead. And extend those legs all the way out the side and hold it here for a minimum of 30 counts. Remember again, make sure you are well warmed up before you do any of these stretches, and hold it there for a minimum 30 count, or longer if you'd like to. Thank you very much and have a wonderful day.